Hey, welcome everybody to the NFL Draft Pre-Show. Andy McNamara alongside Show Alli. Oh, we're ready, baby. We're going to take you up right before the NFL Draft. And Show, this is going to be more unique than any draft in history because it can't be in Vegas. There's no boats going down a Bellagio fountain for players coming in. Everybody is hauled up in this pandemic and self-quarantine. GMs are like, there's no war rooms. Everybody is at their separate homes. So this is going to be a draft like no other. I'm just really curious to see how this whole thing unfolds. Are there any glitches? Is there any IT problems? Like, what is going to happen?
I am really looking forward to maybe seeing what the over under for how many times a GM or president or someone will forget to put themselves on mute, Andy. Like I feel like how many times have any of us called into a work meeting or some kind of group meeting or you're even with your friends or whatever in the times we now live in and someone forgets to put themselves on mute. God, I just it's going to happen. And I'm very excited. Like these are men who work with technology all the time, but like in a much different capacity, in a much different sense. So I'm interested to see what kind of technological glitches perhaps happen. But I think the NFL draft this year, the 2020 NFL draft, Andy, has the potential to be the most watched, not just because people are stuck at home and they're jonesing for some sports, especially something as popular as the NFL, but also simply just the sheer curiosity that you might want from something as unprecedented like this, basically.
Yeah, well, that's it. And in this show, we'll take you up to about 7:45-ish, about 45 minutes to get you ready for the draft. And we'll take you through our top 10 mock draft. We'll go through other players of interest, teams that might be moving up. We'll get to some rumors, news, and notes as up to date as we can get in a couple of moments. We'll go through our prop plays as well, such as how many quarterbacks are going to be taken in the first round. What about running backs? Do the Patriots draft a QB? Whatever. We'll go through some prop plays there, as well as share our favorite draft memories. And of course, take questions from you, the viewer. Jump in the chat room. We have our esteemed moderator, producer, technical director, Drew Livingstone. He's taking care of us. So we'll get those questions in. We hope. And you can get us on Twitter too, at AndyMC81 and at SNS Alli. And Show, I wonder too, now there's different levels of these general managers and front offices as far as being technologically advanced. So the Cleveland Browns, for example, are all analytics based. They have the youngest GM in the league. He was a computer science major at Harvard. I think he's going to be fine. But I don't know if you saw the picture. Was like one GM war room. I think it was John Lynch's of the 49ers compared to Dave Gettleman's of the Giants. Did you see that?
I did, yes, yeah.
And it was like Lynch's was like 3 ones, and Gettleman had like one laptop, a huge binder, and like his mouse pad was a piece of paper. It's like that's the guy who's going to leave his mic off of mute.
Yeah,
for sure.
I wonder what like Bill Belichick's draft room looks like. Like someone from like the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald needs to tweet out a picture somehow of what the Patriots war room looks like. Because this is a guy who is notorious for saying things like, WeChat and YouFace and things like that. I sometimes I feel like he intentionally makes up these terms for social media just to antagonize people. But for someone like that who is notoriously not necessarily anti-technology, but someone who perhaps doesn't like to engage in social media, the draft is so tied to social media on a normal year. And then now we have the 2020 draft, which is all about the virtual aspect, the virtual component of it. I'm really curious to see how many more of these war rooms we get trickling out as the night goes on.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. Already got some questions coming in. Keep them coming in the chat room. We have Keegan asking who's going to go number 1. And Show, I don't know about you, man. I do not see any way, shape, or form, like just for the sake of interest. I put 2 mock drafts out. They're up on sportsnet.ca. They'll become irrelevant in less than an hour, which is kind of frustrating. All the work you put in, and they're gone. They're useless. But I just don't see a world where Joe Burrow does not go to the Cincinnati Bengals. From all we've heard, spotless character. He won the Heisman. He won the national championship. He's from Ohio. And even if the Dolphins would have to, I think, just throw all their picks. Like they have 3 first-rounders this year. They have 2 2s. They have 2 1s next year. Like maybe if they gave all of it for Joe Burrow,
right?
Maybe. But outside of that, if you're the Bengals, take your QB. No, even if he busts out, Show, no one's going to blame the Bengals for taking Joe Burrow. If you don't take him, then that's where the problems happen.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I've heard some analysts talk over the course of today because you're always monitoring things
Sure.
leading up to the draft, and things change seemingly by the minute when it comes to the NFL draft, right? But I feel like I've heard a lot of chatter today about how there are some rumors that the Dolphins might try and trade up for Joe Burrow, try and like divest themselves of some of this very carefully acquired draft capital for Joe. And apart from the fact that had they lost just two more games in last season, they would have just have Joe Burrow
Yep.
fall in their lap. But aside from that, you're right. It's too pricey, too costly to move up. You heard some other analysts say things like the Bengals wouldn't give up Joe Burrow for 5 first-round picks, which seems crazy. I feel like you probably would, but at the same
Right.
time, yeah, I think to answer Keegan's question, there is no chance Joe Burrow does not go #1 overall.
Well, show, I think Adam Schefter might have been eavesdropping on us because 50 seconds ago,
Oh,
Shefty just reported, quote, Bengals president Mike Brown officially welcomed LSU QB Joe Burrow to Cincinnati on
uh,
Wednesday, one day before the draft. Brown sent Burrow a letter that said, amongst other things, that he looks forward to, quote, building championship football teams with you for many years to come. He's
all
going
right.
to Cincinnati.
Yeah, he's going to Cincinnati. It's funny. I feel like every quarterback that the Bengals have taken since Carson Palmer, who I believe also went #1, they
Yeah.
have not necessarily had a lot of success with those quarterbacks. They came close with Carson Palmer, and then of course he got injured, unfortunately, which was a real bummer because they were doing so well. They were really like, I know to you maybe that's not great, Brown, Mr. Brown's over here,
Right,
but
right, right.
still the Bengals that year particularly they were doing pretty well, and yeah, it was a bit of a bummer when he got injured, but since then they have not had that much success at quarterback. Obviously you have to include Andy Dalton in there, but yeah, I think a lot of Bengals fans, and including some of our coworkers, I think are pretty excited about the prospects of seeing LSU product Joe Burrow sling the ball next year, if there is a next year, I should
Well,
say.
yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow as well. Paulo D, are the Browns going to trade up? And
Ooh,
this is a case where, show, I think it's a far higher likelihood that they trade down. It seems to be the MO of this analytics office, which were previously in charge not that long ago, a few years ago, where they love accumulating draft picks. So if the Browns don't stay at 10, I see them trading back. And I only see them doing that if the left tackle of their choosing does not drop to them. If there's show, it's crazy with all the rumors. It's like, oh, there's going to be 5 tackles taken in the top 10. Oh, okay. All right. Well, if that happens, then the Browns are probably going to trade down. Like it's all a case of who's available, who are you targeting? And that's what's so interesting about this, because it's not just who's the best tackle, it's who's the best tackle for your system. So like
right.
under this Kevin Stefanski offense, new head coach of the Browns, he runs the Shanahan Kubiak system, which likes more athletic linemen. So maybe a Mekhi Becton, who maybe is a bit more of a big bruiser, mauler type, even though he is athletic, doesn't quite fit as somebody like, let's say, a Tristan Wirfs or whatever. So that's the other part of it.
Yeah, I feel like the top three linemen in the draft in some combination, and I think Mekhi Becton was in that group, and then that whole drug test thing happened,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
feel like it probably like before I probably could have said to you I could see Becton going in the top three even, right? And then you look at those people, and I think when you're picking that high, you probably want like those kind of concerns. I think scare some people, especially GMs who are a little more old school, and they're just in general
Right.
a little risk averse, let's say. Okay, and so with that in mind, I feel like Becton is now going to drop, but at the same time, I think unless something crazy happens and 4 offensive linemen go before pick 10, I can't see the Browns necessarily trading up because the 10th overall pick, like considering the needs of all the other teams in the top 10 before the Cleveland Browns,
Right.
it doesn't seem like the thing that the Browns need the most, a tackle, is necessarily going to be the position will be bereft when it comes to drafting at the spot they have already.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And shout out on Twitter, my guy Carlin Gay at the Carlin Gay on Twitter. NBA Canada
There you go.
director media. He does it all for NBA Canada. He tweeted out a photo of he's watching along of myself and you doing the show here on YouTube, on Facebook. He's down in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Flair
There you
country,
go.
and all the way from Brazil. Show, how about this? We got all the way from Brazil at Dudamau. He's watching us all the way down there. So you got to love that. We're international, baby. Feeling good.
Sweet. There you go. I mean, how often can we really boast that, right? So
Not very often. We got another question, and keep the chat questions coming on Twitter. You can follow us too. You see right there on your screen, Andy MC81, SNS Alli. Michael Borland says, "Do you think the Bears will make a move to get back into the first round?" And this is a case where the Raiders have this pick, remember, and for Chicago, I'm thinking if let's say the position that they're looking for is wide receiver. It's a very deep receiver class, deepest one arguably shown in 20 years. Are they looking for a tight end upgrade of some sort? Well, not a great year for tight ends outside of Cole Kmet from Notre Dame. You can wait on these guys. I feel for what the Bears might need, it might not be worth trading back up into the first round. So I don't necessarily see that happening. However, you always got to track later in the draft. Like Seattle almost always trades out of the first round, right? New England's done that before too. Seattle's picking 27. I'm looking here, 27. What about San Francisco? They have one pick at 13, another at 31. San Francisco doesn't have a pick after that until round 5. So maybe the 49ers want to accumulate more picks, and they'll get that from trading with the Bears. So there's different avenues they can go depending on who falls. I just don't necessarily see I don't see them trading up there in that regard. Do you see the Bears doing that at all?
No, I think the reason is much similar to yours, simply because the Bears are not good enough, I feel like, as a team right now, in order to trade away draft assets to get
Yeah.
back into the first, right? I think it's really easy to look at the value of a first round pick and say, this is what you're going to pick in the first round. This is who's going to be available. But I think because of first round picks in the NFL, and I think this has become a larger thing in sports in general, definitely you've seen the usage of analytics rise in other sports, and you've seen how valued picks in other sports have become. But it has kind of always been like that in the NFL, especially in the modern era. And it feels as though it costs so much to get back into the first round that, yeah, I just don't know if that it would be necessarily worth sacrificing a third round pick, pardon me, or a second round pick, or multiple later round picks just to get a player in the first, when you could, like you mentioned, a deep receiver draft. The Bears could use a receiver to pair with Allen Robinson, and they could probably still get someone pretty good in the second, third, fourth round,
Yeah.
because this is that kind of year. It doesn't come around very often, but it's here in 2020.
It definitely is. And we're going to share some prospects, some sleepers that we like a little later in the draft. Our favorite draft memory. If you got a favorite draft day memory, good or bad, let me know. We'll be getting ours out to you in a few minutes, as well as our mock draft, our top 10 picks. But we're getting word. People want some Brady talk show. I know it's as a Patriots fan, it's a bit of a show. Have you ordered your Jarrett Stidham jersey yet for New England?
You know what? I figured I'd wait until after this weekend, just in case, just in
Yeah,
case.
probably a good idea. Now, so this kind of ties into some of the rumors and latest news from the day in the last couple of days. Left tackle Trent Williams. The Washington Redskins have been trying to deal him, seems like forever. He wants out. Washington wanted to keep him. Now, like, okay, so what's the asking price? Well, two of the teams that are the hottest rumored to want to trade for him, an established left tackle. Now, he missed all last year. He's had some health concerns. Okay, so where is he at? Early 30s. But it's the Bucks and the Browns. If I'm Tampa Bay, I don't have time to groom necessarily a young left tackle. I need a plug and play guy because my new quarterback, the greatest of all time, is 43 years old. So I think Tampa Bay makes a whole lot of sense, even if it's mortgaging the future show, because the future for them with Tom Brady and, oh yeah, Gronk is back. Like, how cool is that? Gronkowski and Brady, like the band's back together. What's going on?
I will have a different explainer than cool, perhaps, but but yeah, it is pretty wild that basically I feel like it was something like at 3:45 or 3:42 on a weekday, Gronk comes back and says, "Yeah, I'd be interested in playing for Tampa Bay," and by like maybe half an hour later, 45 minutes later, by 4:30 at the absolute latest, the trade was done.
Done.
I think I like put my phone down. I went to the kitchen to make it like some food, and I came back to my room going, "Oh yeah, where's my phone? Here it is. Oh, the Gronk deal is done," which is pretty wild. But yeah, I agree with you. The future is now, to borrow a cliche, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they're clearly going for it. Right? They traded the fourth
Have to.
for Gronk and a seventh, and I feel like that's a pretty good deal, all things considered. I mean, like there was no way Rob Gronkowski was playing for the Patriots in any way, shape, or form this season or next year or whatever.
No.
So if that's the case, then Bill Belichick getting a fourth round pick for essentially nothing I view that as a win. Actually, I feel like this is one of those rare cases where you could say it's a win-win for both teams because now Brady and Gronk get to play with one another again, and OJ Howard maybe get some of the pressure taken off him. Cameron Brate still a great still a
Yeah.
great player
Are
in
you
the
going to
red
keep
zone,
all
right?
three? Like,
Yeah,
are you
yeah,
going
all
to keep
three.
all
Yeah.
three? And that's the thing. I don't know. And what's interesting with Gronk is isn't he technically still a WWE champion? Like at 24, he
You
got the
had to
belt.
work that in. You had to work that in,
He's
eh?
got,
Oh,
like,
gosh.
isn't Gronk still technically a champ, like a
Oh, man.
24/7 champion? Apparently, you can defend that belt at any time. I don't know if that's going to be worked into the storyline or not, but in any
Well,
case,
I view it like this. Belichick traded a wrestler for a fourth-round pick. So, I
that is
mean,
pretty
pretty
good.
good return, right?
That is pretty good. But Gronk also, despite all the surgeries, injury history, he lost a lot of weight. Like he's going to have to start bulking up, like a lot, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, it's true.
that's the question there. You have to think about that. But I think Brady, with the weapons he has there, I would like to see Tampa Bay upgrade their backfield, get a running back in there. Probably not the first round, but maybe you go second or third. There's some nice depth at the running back position also. We had a question from Sean, I believe, a couple minutes ago in the chat about if we think Detroit will trade out of that 3 spot, the Lions. And show it's been pretty hotly contested.
Yeah.
That for Detroit, it's all right. If they get the right offer, they'll trade back because Detroit, they're not going to go for a quarterback. We don't think Matt Stafford, when healthy, is still really good.
Had a great year last year before the injury.
Yes, and even the year before, you had that thumb. He was playing at an MVP level. You got the receivers down. The backfield, Kerryon Johnson, I think you're okay. Maybe add somebody a little bit later. For them, though, and Matt Patricia, coming from the Patriots, he's a defensive-minded guy.
Yeah.
I had in my 2 mock drafts on Sportsnet, the first one I had them taking Isaiah Simmons, who is the Swiss Army knife. We'll talk about him in the mock draft. But this is a guy, he can play linebacker, he can play box safety, you can mix him in and around. In my final one, I decided Jeff Okudah, best cornerback out of Ohio State. They have a deep need there. You plug and play him and go. But hey, if the Lions get offered a pick for someone to move up for a quarterback or a tackle or whatever, I guess they got to listen. If I'm a Lions fan, I wouldn't want to fall too deep because you still want to try to get the best player available.
See, and the thing is, you mentioned Jeff Okudah, and I really like him. Great cornerback, and like you said, we'll get to all that stuff in the mock draft. But let's just say they're really enamored with Okudah, and the Dolphins come knocking, and they say, "Hey, we want to take Tua at pick 3. We're not sure he's going to be there by the time we get to pick 5 because of other trades or for whatever reason. They think that trade would behoove them for whatever reason, and there's still a possibility, again, based on the chatter we've heard with other teams, the teams that are the most likely to trade up because of the draft capital they have, like the Dolphins, right? That it's possible the Lions, let's just say in theory, trade down to number 5 and still get Jeff Okudah because of the kind of draft capital that the Dolphins have and the other players that the other teams will potentially need. And I think that's a really interesting and intriguing thing, I think, for the Lions to consider tonight.
Yeah, and the other part we have to consider, too, with all this is Matt Patricia and that coaching staff, after this year, they're going to be on thin ice. They're going to be – the sea is already getting warm.
It's true.
So for them, okay, maybe you accumulate more picks for another regime. Like, you got to take care of you, right? Like, that's the other thing we have to consider for the Lions. If I'm them, take the best player. You got a lockdown corner for the next decade in Jeff Okudah. Do it. Or Isaiah Simmons, depending on how you like the creativity of Patricia, I think would fit.
Or Derek Brown, right? I mean, you could go any of these guys.
SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah. Not a lot of people talking about him. Yeah. Got a question from Laura. Says, who's the best non-Power 5 quarterback prospect? I think out of that group, we probably got to look at Jordan Love. Now, I'm not a Jordan Love fan from the sense of that you got to have him in the first round. Like, there's been comparisons to a raw Patrick Mahomes. I'm not buying that at all. I know he had terrible receivers at Utah State last year. He had a really good 2018. This is a guy like I see him maybe fitting better in, let's say, a Green Bay or a New Orleans situation if they fall in love with him. Like, you sit. Like, heck, maybe the Packers just revisit and redo the Favre Rodgers, but do it Rodgers and Love and have him sit.
I've seen a lot of mock drafts tie Love to both, yeah, to all, basically to any franchise that has a quarterback who is aging, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And he was tied to New England before all the Brady stuff went down. He's still a little bit tied to the Patriots. Like you said, the Green Bay and
Mhm.
Rodgers and the whole situation there. I think they're going to at least consider starting to prep for the future. Rodgers has suffered some injuries in the past, and especially in the last couple of seasons as well, right? And then in addition to that, yeah, New Orleans, you got to prep for that eventually. I always thought Teddy Bridgewater would stick around, but that's clearly not happening anymore. So
No.
yeah, I feel like Jordan Love is definitely my favorite. Is Jalen Hurts part of that, or is he part of the
Oh.
group of five? You think?
Yeah, he's part of the big. I think the
Okay,
big power schools.
fair.
Um, as far as being well, kind of the big schools. Like not many people are sitting down the casual fan saying, "Hey, when's Utah State on Saturday? When's
Yeah,
Utah
fair,
State
fair.
play?" but Jordan Love, like if you were to tell me in my first mock I had Jordan Love not going in the first round, if you
Right.
get Jordan Love in the second round, cool. I just wouldn't waste a first round pick on a guy that I'm just not that high. Update here, Ian Rappaport from NFL Network. This follows into Robert Stacy's question here in the chat room. Any chance Washington doesn't take Chase Young? Well, not 5 minutes ago, insider Ian Rappaport says the Redskins have received calls from teams about potentially trading up to number 2, but they've made a decision. And sources say no trade. They are making the pick because they love the player who will be there for them. And Show, I got to agree. I am taking Chase Young all day. I would make the first 2 picks of the draft should be boring, should be quick, should be no surprise. Chase Young, to me, is the best overall player in this draft. Forget position, the absolute best. He's a monster.
Yeah, we know we live in a world where quarterbacks demand high draft capital.
Yeah,
That's just how it is. It'll probably always be like that. And to be fair, Joe Burrow is an exciting prospect, but I agree with you. Chase Young is, I think, the best NFL player available to any team in this draft just because of the freakish athleticism. Like you saw the kinds of things in the past couple of seasons, what the Bosa brothers did in their college careers, and then what they did when you saw them translate to the NFL, right? Those
yeah.
guys individually are game wreckers. And then you have Chase Young come along at Ohio State and blow away their records, right?
Broke the
So
records.
it's just he is an absolute human wrecking ball, and it's exciting to watch him play. And I think it would be silly for Washington to pass on him.
Yeah, me too. You take him, you're done. You have Show. It's rare when you have a player that other teams have to specifically game
Yeah,
plan for. When you
yeah,
play the Washington Redskins in 2020, you're going to have to say for offenses, where's Chase Young? You're going to have to scheme runs away from him because he can stuff you there. You're going to have to make sure your quarterback ain't rolling left and he's getting rid of the ball quick. Show, there was one play, and this kind of sums up how great I think Chase Young was. In college last year, the opponents were like, well, he's going to get to the quarterback anyway. We're
right.
going to not even block him. We're going to have him come in quicker and throw the ball over his head to the running back. So they did it. What Chase Young did, he stopped on a dime. He cut back, tackled the running back for a loss. Still,
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
he is silly. He feels like one of those players that you cheat to make in Madden,
Yeah,
like so you don't have to spend all your player points and you just
yeah,
like go into the player creator and then assign him to a team. That's what Chase Young feels like to me.
yeah,
And it's funny. I've seen some people reach back into the history books and compare him to a young, let's say Albert Hainsworth. It's much different, of course, because he was more of an interior guy
yeah,
and
yeah,
Chase
yeah.
Young is plays on the edge and whatnot. But it's funny because it's crazy to think that's where we're comparing him. But I think Chase Young is far more talented and is far more polished as an NFL prospect and NFL player coming out of Ohio State.
Yeah, me too. He's absolutely tremendous. We have a tweet in from at Matt Florjancic, my guy out of Cleveland sports reporter, says, what will be the biggest surprise pick of the first round and who will be the team that makes the deal? This kind of ties in for me to Daniel M's comment in the chat room here, who asked, where does Tua end up? And Show, the great mystery of this is, what do the medicals say of Tua? We don't know this. Insiders are going to be misdirected by scouts and people with agendas. We don't know. So if he was fully healthy, maybe the Bengals would have taken him.
Sure.
The Dolphins, you'd think if he was fully healthy, would be a no-brainer. But here's what we have to remember. That terrible hip injury, which it looks like he's rehabbed from fine, is not the only thing. This guy has had 2 ankle surgeries. He's had wrist problems. broken nose, broken finger, concussions. It's everything seems at some point to come up for Tua. He doesn't protect himself properly in the pocket. If he's healthy, is he as dynamic as they come? Yes. But the thing is, he's small, he's brittle. And how often do you see guys who get injured throughout college or the minor leagues come into the pros like, nope, totally healthy? It's rare.
It is rare. It is rare for sure. I see. Here's the thing. Like I feel like I disagree with you on this only because not because I dislike, let's say, Justin Herbert, who is, I guess, like the quote unquote the other guy between, like,
Yeah.
you take Joe, you put him at the top, and then the next two quarterbacks in some order should, in theory, be Tua and Herbert, right?
Right.
And I, as much as I like Justin Herbert, and I mean, even if he doesn't go to the Dolphins at 5, he'll probably just go to the Chargers at 6. It feels like, right? But I
Right.
mean, again, who knows? But at the same time, when it comes to Tua, I just feel like if people are passing on Tua because of the hip injury and other injury concerns, it is an issue. Don't get me wrong. It's something to be wary of. You can't ignore it. Absolutely. But at the same time, the kind of passer, the kind of thrower he is, and continues to be the pocket presence, even though he has diminished size, all the tools that make him so exciting, those are the reasons to me that you can't pass on Tua. Right? Like, we
Right.
know NFL teams, and I used the term risk averse earlier, right? And you teams always want to get the quote unquote like safest bet, right?
Sure.
For lack of a better word. And the teams that continually do that and continually pass up prospects, I feel like, because of like something, are the teams that usually end up picking in the top to 15, 10 to 15. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because they like stick to the tried and true formula, and they don't try something new, or they don't like go out and do something. Like we saw, if maybe the Ravens don't pick Lamar Jackson because they think, quote unquote, he's just a running back, and they don't get the MVP basically last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. I just feel like going with the quote unquote safe pick, I feel like, would not be in the Dolphins' best interest here, even though I think probably you do have to be wary of the hip injury and all that stuff for Tua. But he is exciting. I don't know if he's like a can't miss prospect like Joe Burrow purportedly is, but at the same
Right.
time, he's good enough that I think they should just much like the Bengals and the Redskins have so far, they should just zip it up, throw away the key, and then draft Tua basically.
And you know what? It makes sense that they could take a swing on Tua this year because they're so loaded with draft picks.
Sure.
They got
Yeah.
2 next year. So if Tua comes in, doesn't work out, gets in, whatever, you theoretically could still make a pitch for Trevor Lawrence next year. Like, you have the ammo to potentially still do that. And that's what's interesting to the Dolphins. So maybe they will. We'll get to the mock draft in a minute. But as far as Matt question, biggest surprise, I think the biggest surprise is one of Tua or Justin Herbert falls out of the top 10. I think there's a chance because the Chargers seem way too high show on Tyrod Taylor. I don't know
why though.
I don't
Why?
understand. I don't understand. No, I'm with bring in Cam Newton.
Yeah,
For
I don't get
God,
it.
why? Like, Tyrod Taylor is the most boring. Like, he can't win you a game. If you're down in the fourth quarter, it's over. You're done. Sorry.
Look, we're broadcasting from Toronto,
Yeah.
and if people here in the city are well acquainted with Tyrod Taylor, right? Like, they're well
Yeah.
acquainted with him from his time with the Bills, and this is not to kind of further beat a dead horse, but it's just, we've seen what he is, and I think there is a certain ceiling, and that
Mhm.
ceiling, I think, is just, it's not high enough for a franchise that is in a new city, a new stadium, unveiled a new set of uniforms, all these things. Like, they need, for lack of a better term, a little bit of pizzazz,
Need some
basically,
star
right?
power.
And you're not going to get that with Taylor, I feel like.
Yeah. That's why I think if the Dolphins do pass on Tua, I think the Chargers take him just for name value. Think of the jersey sales. You got
Sure.
sharp new unis, and you got Tua with all the excitement. I think that's a good landing spot. One more question before the mock draft. Nicholas Gualteros says, "Who's the first team to trade up, if any?" I think we're going to see less trades that are going to happen on the clock because of all the technology, people from home, and it's a little weird.
Right.
But I think a team that could trade up, let's go through some of the rumors here. The Denver Broncos to jump up for a receiver. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe for a tackle if somebody slips.
Sure.
You got somebody like the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. Like, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
they want a cornerback. I feel like they have a need after Desmond Trufant left. So who knows, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's probably safe. So I think one of those teams who are in sort of that mid-teen level could want to jump up. And the likely suitors, Detroit, the Browns, maybe the 49ers again at 13 to try to accumulate some more picks for later since they don't have that 5th round one. Let's see there. I want to put out a question here. We'll answer this a little later. We'll get to the mock of what player do you really want your team to draft tonight? And it goes back, show, I'm a big fan of the movie Draft Day. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Kevin Costner. It's about the Browns win. They do great. I love the movie. Watched it today.
Oh man, did you really watch today?
Every day, or not every day. That'd be something. Every year on Draft Day. Every day I watch it. Every year on Draft Day, I watch the movie, and I'm just like at the end, I'm like, yeah, Sonny Weaver, let's go. But the question, the point of that was in the movie, he writes down and puts it in his pocket. You don't know till the end of the movie. He writes down the player, Vontae Mack, no matter what. And so my question is blank, no matter what. Who's that player? And it's funny, in Cleveland, show, the biggest, the most trending topics on Twitter are hashtag NFL draft and hashtag Vontae Mack in the movie. How amazing is that?
That's pretty terrific. Oh boy. Hey, also Draft Day, directed by a Canadian director. And so there you go. A little bit of trivia for all you Canucks out there.
That's right. Okay. And we'll get to our favorite Draft Day memory after too. Shoot those in the chat room as well. I want to hear your favorite Draft Day memory, good or bad. Mine turned out to be bad, but in the moment it was good. So let's go through our top 10 here, show. And you can check out my mock draft 2.0, which would be relevant for another about 35, 40 minutes.
30 minutes, yeah.
Right. And gone. On at sportsnet.ca, on Twitter at AndyMC81, and Instagram at AndyMCSports. But let's go. We'll go every other pick. So if you want to start at the top, number 1, first overall, the Bengals virtually come to the podium.
Okay, and with the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, the Bengals select a no-brainer, QB Joe Burrow from LSU. And just because, Andy, I know you are a big Draft Day fan, I did this just for you. Joe Burrow, no matter what. So there you go. That's all. That's for the Bengals.
There it is.
Okay? They're taking him no matter what. Yeah, I feel like
perfect. Joe Burrow, no matter what. Hopefully, like in the movie, he's not like Bo Callahan and no one came to his birthday party. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Number 2, we talked about second overall pick, Washington Redskins, Chase Young. I don't care what the trade is. Take Chase Young. You have a game wrecker on your team for the next 10 plus years. No doubt about it. Chase Young.
Yeah, Chase Young is honestly, Andy, we just spent a couple minutes talking about him, so I won't go super deep on that, but he's so talented, and like you said, he is the best overall player in this 2020 draft. I feel like in terms of athleticism and size, there are a few prospects in the last, let's say, 5 years, if you want to narrow it down. It's an arbitrary number, I know, but at the same time, Chase Young is the guy who you want on that D line. You want rushing the quarterback from all angles, and he'll probably be a terror in the NFC East for a lot of years to come for whoever is quarterbacking for those other 3 teams.
All right, number 3, the Detroit Lions. Assuming they stay put at number 3, who are the Lions taking, show?
So we talked about this before, but with the number 3 pick in the NFL draft from Ohio State, they take cornerback Jeffrey Okudah. And we talked about him a little bit before as well, but I think he'll pair nicely with Trufant in the secondary. They do need, it is a need there. He blends size, he blends length, he blends athleticism, into one complete package. He is a complete cornerback. It gives the Giants, who are, the Lions, who are very low down in the league in yards given up and in points against, a true number 1 corner to headline their defense. And we talked about the Lions trading down, but even if they did trade down, they could still get Okudah. But I think they stay put and they pick him at the number 3 slot here.
I dig that. He's, again, somebody, you have the size. He's 6'1", so he can have the size to hang with any receiver. 205 pounds, he can take punishment. Ran a 4.48 40-yard dash and keep up with anybody. I think he's the total package. So Okudah, Lions, New York Giants. I'll take number 4, New York Giants. Now we have to remember Dave Gettleman, very traditional general manager, as old school as they come. This is a guy who loves building through the lines, O-line and D-line. So I see them facing a decision. Do you go maybe a Derek Brown, SEC defensive player of the year, even though he's not necessarily an Aaron Donald type where he can get to the quarterback, very complete player? Or do you protect Daniel Jones and help out Saquon Barkley and getting your pick of the best offensive tackle? So in this case, in my first mock, I had them taking Mekhi Becton. Gettleman's old school enough that a failed or a flagged drug test at the combine would spook him. So I think he passes on Becton and goes with Tristan Wirfs, who was an athletic freak. He can play the right side first because you got Nate Solder for another couple years there. Then you can ease him over. So I think the Giants go Tristan Wirfs and have a nice offensive tackle who has got a lot of size and athleticism.
The only other guy I would take here, and I think Wirfs is a perfect pick for the Giants, like you said, super athletic, and maybe after the Nate Solder deal expires, because I don't know that he's necessarily Solder been someone who's lived up to his contract necessarily, right? Like I liked him when he was in New England, but I think there was a reason he was let go, and it's probably because he wasn't going to be worth the giant contract that he commanded, rightly so, right? But at the same time, yeah, I feel like Wirfs could be someone who fills in on the left side eventually, like you said. Jedrick Wills is the only other guy out of Alabama, only because he's another one of those three kind of top O-line prospects that we've been talking about. And Joe Judge, who is their new head coach in New York, before his time with the Patriots, he was one of the special teams assistants with Alabama. So he has that tie both through the Patriots and through himself with Alabama. And of course, Wills is from Alabama. So that's the only other guy I could see going there. But I think it makes the most sense for the Giants to take an O-lineman.
Yeah, I do like Jedrick Wills as well. Great footwork at the combine. Best footwork out of any of the top four in my mind. Rob in the chat room here says, boo, he wanted Simmons to go to the Lions. And you know what? Actually, in my mock 1.0, I had Isaiah Simmons going to Detroit.
Yeah.
And I think it would make sense because Matt Patricia is creative enough. He's a defensive guy first. It might be too much for him to pass on to think of what I can do with this toy. And he might not be for everybody, Simmons, but that I would not be surprised if the Lions went that way. But in this scenario, they didn't. They go Okudah. Number 5 show. Who are they taking? Who are the Dolphins taking?
So I got to stick with my guy. I got to go with it. I think that Justin Herbert would be a good pick if that's what they end up doing because he's going to be a good quarterback no matter where he is. But I do feel like the quarterback that the Dolphins have been linked to throughout this whole process, throughout all year, I don't think it's changed. It's going to be Tua Tagovailoa. I feel like it's just, I know we talked about the hip injury and the injury concerns, but he's exciting. He played not that far ultimately from Miami. I know Alabama is a little further away, but you know what I mean. It's all things considered, it's relatively close. Yeah. And I feel like he is the guy who's going to go there and help out Brian Flores, who I genuinely think is a very talented coach, and he'll have a very talented quarterback to go along with him.
If the Dolphins are comfortable with Tua's medicals, I agree wholeheartedly. If not, things could get interesting real quick in that first round.
This is the divergence point right here.
Right here. You're right. Yeah. Right at this point, if the Lions, especially if the Lions don't trade, this is where the rest of the draft starts to fall. And if he doesn't go, watch out. In my mock, I had Justin Herbert going to the Dolphins because in that scenario, the Dolphins were not comfortable. And instead, the Chargers take Tua. But in this case, since you had Tua going to the Chargers, I'm going to say they go with Justin Herbert. They don't want to spend money on a veteran free agent quarterback, another one like a Cam Newton or Jameis Winston. Fine. So you go with Herbert. Somebody, all the tools in the world, but needs some time to sit. I compare him. He has the skill set similar to a Josh Allen here show where he's sneaky mobile, big 6'6", big body, can make every throw. The problem to me, though, is he aims the ball a bit too much. His decision-making is slow, so he'll force the ball, and he really looks down his first receivers. Good coaching can take care of that. So it depends how able he is to learn, how willing. So the upside, he kind of has, I think, that Josh Allen type of arc, potentially, but he could also totally bust out and be like a Blaine Gabbert or a Blake Bortles.
Gosh, I hope not.
Right? That would be ugly.
With no Rivers, basically all I'll say on the Herbert that we haven't talked about already is simply that LA, with no Phillip Rivers there, will have a really tough time convincing pretty much anyone that they're not interested in a quarterback at this number 6 pick here. You know what I mean? Like there's no way they can really say to anybody in the media, that, or at least in any way convincingly, that they're not going to take a quarterback here, simply because that's just like that is their easily by far their number one most pressing need. They have wide receivers, they have talented tight ends, they had guys on defense, they have guys in the O line. It's just this is where they need it. And in the NFL, like we talked about with Burrow, it's a quarterback driven league. So they need someone here, and they need someone with some sizzle for their new stadium, their new uniforms.
Oof. They do get some buzz. Number 7, Carolina Panthers. Who you got?
So the Panthers, we heard Rob from the chat talk a little bit about Isaiah Simmons, and I think this is where Isaiah Simmons goes. And the easy comparison is, of course, no Luke Kuechly means they need someone to step up in the middle of that defense. I could also see the Panthers going after Derek Brown out of Auburn here, but either way, I think it would be a shock if the Panthers don't go defense heavy with their top pick. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Isaiah Simmons. I think he is probably the most interesting and maybe versatile, talented player in the draft, behind Chase Young, as we talked about. But I wanted to spend some time on Simmons here before we wrap things up in a couple of picks. But he's interesting because of how the discourse around him has played out, right? Like you have these DCs talking about how they can't put linebackers on tight ends because the tight ends are too fast, or they're talking about how running backs are catching passes and making plays around the defense in space and all these things. And then you have someone like Simmons who is more or less tailor made for that role come in, and then they hem and haw about, oh, we don't know where or how to use him. It just seems kind of contradictory to me. I like to compare him a little bit to Patrick Chung of the Patriots and formerly as well of the Eagles. Simmons is obviously far more athletic and far younger. He's 21, the Chung's 32. But in the sense of how Chung was used, right? He was used by the Patriots to blitz from the safety position often. He stacked the box. He covered tight ends and slot guys man to man. He bounced between that linebacker and safety spot very often, even though he was more of a safety, I think. I want to state that Simmons is definitely more talented than Patrick Chung, but I foresee his usage, at least when he gets a little more comfortable and acquainted to NFL playbooks. I see him being used much like that, and I think the Panthers could totally use him in the absence of Luke Kuechly.
Yeah, and it's a case of, does he get with a defensive coordinator that knows how to use him, that can be creative enough? Let's zip through the last few picks here, Show, and then we got a couple other things to hit before we boot out of here.
Let's do it.
I'll say 8 Arizona Cardinals. They fleeced the Houston Texans for DeAndre Hopkins. No need to take a wide receiver. You're good. Totally fine. They go offensive line. This is where they take Jedrick Wills out of Alabama. We talked about him already. Makes a lot of sense. You need to deepen and try to protect the diminutive Kyler Murray, generously listed at 5'11". He ain't 5'11", but you need to help him. So I'll say Jedrick Wills 8. Who's 9 with Jacksonville?
I mentioned Derek Brown. He can go anywhere in the top 10, but I think this is where he goes. The draft is light on interior D linemen, and Brown, as we use the term wrecking ball a couple times, he's one of those guys. This is also a place to note that I think this is where a lot of people have been mocking trades, right? So I think the Jags could totally get Derek Brown if they trade down a little bit. If he's still available at 9, maybe they pick up a couple more draft capital and improve in other areas later on in the draft. But if they stay put, I think they take Derek Brown here, and I leave the 10 overall pick to you and your beloved Browns.
Right. And you know what? Hey, it'd be interesting if Tua did fall. You only got Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. Browns got to go O-line. Now, if there's some weird run, now lots of rumors Browns will trade down, but I have them taking the best natural left tackle in this draft, Andrew Thomas out of Georgia. He faced high-end competition in the SEC. This is somebody All-American last 2 years at left tackle. Show, I think he has the highest floor, lowest ceiling of any of these tackles. Maybe he's not going to be a Hall of Famer. Maybe he's a borderline Pro Bowler, but he's kind of, you can set him on the left side and forget it. And you're good for the next 10, 12 years at that position. So I'm comfortable with the Browns going Andrew Thomas out of Georgia.
Yeah, he's they signed Jack Conklin to that big deal.
Yeah,
they still need someone at the left side. We talked about Trent Williams, of course, but if they don't end up swinging something for Williams, then I totally like Andrew Thomas here. Any of the linemen we've discussed, Wirfs, Wills, and now Thomas, none of them also should, in theory, fall past the 10th overall pick, I feel like.
No, I'm with you. Quick, we teased it before here. Want to get quick favorite draft day memory. Mine, Show, is the 2014 draft. The Browns select Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel. The circus came to town, and it was like, Show, when I was just looking at him pre-draft, I'm like, no, I was. But then as soon as he went to my team, I was like, yeah, Johnny, with money signed. The Browns were cool. It was amazing. And then it just turned out nothing. It was garbage. He had the fake mustache and wig. He went to Vegas. Like, just a total disaster. Now he's out late. But from just a pure joyous moment, that 2014 draft, when he came on the stage and did the money sign, I was hooked. So that's
Do,
mine.
do, do you have a Manziel jersey?
No, I'm
You don't.
smart
Okay.
enough. I only bought
Okay.
the only
Okay.
Browns quarterback jersey I have is retired Brian Sipe from 1980. I'm
All
not
right.
taking Baker's. I got lots of Baker stuff, but he's gonna have to be around a few more years before I get a Browns jersey.
Fair. Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
What's
Okay.
yours? What's your favorite
My,
draft day?
my favorite memory, at least of the last, let's say, decade, is when Bill Belichick did something that he pretty much never does, and he traded up in the first round twice in the same year. In the first round in 2012, he got Chandler Jones at pick 21, and then a couple of picks later, he traded up again to get Dante Hightower out of Alabama at pick 25. They were great contributions during their time with the Patriots. Of course, Chandler Jones was shipped off to Arizona before he could command top dollar. He still won a couple of Super Bowls with the Patriots.
Yeah.
And Dante Hightower is still there, and he's been an invaluable cog in the middle of that defense. He's suffered a lot of injuries, but I think fans will remember him most from the game-saving tackle on Marshawn Lynch in the Super
Oof.
Bowl in 2014, right before the Butler interception. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that, considering Belichick either trades out of the first round or trades down so many times over the course of his tenure as both head coach and GM, I feel like that was really exciting because he did it not just once, but twice in the same year.
Right, Nicholas in the chat room says his favorite memory was Eli to the Chargers. LOL. I assume he's a Giants fan.
It's funny.
That's really good.
That's a good one.
You know what? Let's hit a couple of these prop plays, which can tie into some of the
Yeah,
other
let's
prospects.
do it.
Now we have which wide receiver gets drafted first. You can pick CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. In most circles, myself included, I consider these guys the top two receivers. For me, CeeDee Lamb trumps Jeudy because of the hand issues. I think Judy's more dynamic, but it has some concentration drops.
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb, I think you can send him over the top. He averaged over 21 yards per catch last season. I think he's the real deal, and you can plug and play him in any type of system. So I'll say CeeDee Lamb.
You know what? I'm gonna go CeeDee Lamb as well because I don't think, like, we did the top 10, and
Yeah.
I don't think that CeeDee Lamb lasts much past the top 10.
No, he
Like, I
could go to
think
the
if
Jets at 11.
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Potentially.
he goes to Jets at 11. He could go to the Raiders. He could go
Yep.
to the Broncos if they trade up, where they definitely need a wide receiver to pair with Cortland Sutton. I think he definitely goes first, but with the caveat that Jerry Jeudy probably goes maybe the next pick or the pick after.
Yeah, I'll side with that. We got about 5 minutes left. Let's go to a couple prospects we're really high on, but are most likely not going to go in the first round. I should say as well, folks, Show and I will be on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, and Canada wide on the Sportsnet Radio Network Friday night, just after 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern, recapping day one, day two, and the rest of the weekend of the draft. So make sure you're tuning in to that as well. But for me, I got two. Wide receiver, Chase Claypool, Canada's own, out of Abbotsford, BC, and quarterback Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma. And show my hot take here is when it's all said and done and we look 5-6 years down the road, the two quarterbacks that have had the best NFL careers out of this draft class will be Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts. Not Tua, not Herbert, not Love. Jalen Hurts is going to be the real deal. I could see him, if he goes to your Patriots somewhere in the second round, do cartwheels, man. Like, that's a guy, he's not just a run-first quarterback. You look at the side, he runs a lot. He does, but he looks to throw first. He leads receivers. That's what you got to look at, too. What are these quarterbacks doing when they're throwing the ball? Can the receivers make plays after the catch? Jalen Hurts does that, and he's improved each step of this offseason program. The footwork's gotten better, the drop back. I think he's the real deal. And if it was me, I'd be taking him in the first round, but I don't think he gets there. And real quick, Chase Claypool, Notre Dame, combine darling. Show 6'4",
I saw your
230
notes on
plus.
him. I saw your notes on him.
The guy can run like a 5'9" guy.
Yeah.
Like, I think you get him, he's going to be this year's DK Metcalf, who someone gets a steal and's like, how the heck did this guy drop?
I like those picks for sure. I think both Claypool and Hurts, when they get to the NFL level, will be absolutely dynamic. For me, I'm going to go and focus on one. Maybe if I have some time, I'll go with another one. But Jonathan Taylor, running back. We haven't talked a lot about running backs.
Yeah.
I feel like in this whole chat we've had, because we talked a lot about how the wide receivers is a very deep wide receiver draft. It's equally a very deep running back draft as well. And I think Jonathan Taylor has the tools. He has every tool to be a very, very dynamic player in the NFL. And I just think that with the way running backs are valued these days, I don't necessarily think that teams have to take him in the first round, right? Like I
Yeah.
think it's very possible and even likely that he'll go in the second round or even the third round. And DeAndre Swift is another guy. Like he could
Love him.
absolutely go in the first round, but it wouldn't shock me to see him go later in the draft as well, just because of the depth with at other positions. The positional scarcity, let's say, is not really there for running backs, and so you can afford to wait a little bit.
Exactly. J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State.
Right.
Those are kind of
Yeah.
my big three.
Yeah.
Who like show you could, if they went all in the first round, you wouldn't hear any arguments out of me because they have the talent. And running backs are one of those few positions that can start day one and be an immediate impact.
Right.
But by the end of their first contract, you can probably move on. You don't have to pay them. So
true.
is it a first round pick? That let's finish on this. Our one last prop: over under 0.5 running backs taken in the first round. That's a Vegas prop. So that means only one has to be taken. Just one.
Yeah.
I have DeAndre Swift going to the Dolphins in my mock draft on sportsnet.ca because if the Dolphins can get their quarterback, an offensive lineman, and their running back to couple with Jordan Howard, I think if you're a Dolphins fan, you have a drink, say goodnight. Like you're having a great time. I'm going to say over. It might just be one, but if that's a great prop to take. Just one running back has to be taken. One team has to fall in love with one guy.
Yeah, it's true. I've seen Swift mock to the Dolphins. I've seen him mock to the Patriots as well.
Yeah.
Go back to that Georgia well, like they did for Sony Michel. But I just feel like ultimately I'm going to go under. I'm going to take the under.
Wow.
And I think people. I just think people end up. They wait on the running backs because, like you said, they don't want to pay them that much, and they want to be able to pay them the bracket that you get from a later round pick, basically.
Right, and maybe we see a run of running backs in the second once that first one goes. People go. Yeah. I think we'll see a wide receiver run as well. All right, folks. Boy, we could have done 2 hours of this show.
Yeah,
just getting started. But that's it, guys. The NFL draft. It's here. I'm going to go. I'm going to relax. I'm going to get some food. I'm going to get a bevy. I'm going to see what happens, what madness unfolds. And we'll be back together Friday night across the Sportsnet radio network to see what happened in round 1 and round 2.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be a fun night, and good luck to your Browns, Andy.
Oh, good luck to you. Well, not too much luck to your Patriots. You guys are good. Good luck to my Browns indeed. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for jumping in the chat room. Thanks so much to Drew moderating and producing this whole thing. Have fun with the draft, and we'll talk to you soon.